welcome to the great state of Texas, where they say that everything is bigger and it's easy to imagine cowboys on horseback riding into town. But Austin has replaced saloons with technology and glimmering lights, so if you're looking to let the horses run, you need to find the right venue. Welcome to Circuit of the Americas, the world-class purpose-built Formula One racing circuit just outside the city limits, where Ferrari makes its triumphant return with Ferrari Racing Days and the second round of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge North America Series. A world-class facility hosting arguably one of the most recognized automotive marques in history. It's time to let the horses run.
The final day of Ferrari Racing Days set to begin right now in terms of racing. We've already had the business of qualifying to set the grid for the fourth race of the championship in the 2023 Ferrari Challenge North America. Hi everyone, I'm Shay Adam, joined by Brian Till, and Amanda Busick is down in the pits for us for this Coppa Shell competition. Brian, this has been a great start to the season so far, but it's not even close to being done yet.
Oh no, there's so much left to go, and there's a lot of points that you can either gather up and put in your points basket, right, for the championship, or you can leave them on the table here, and you don't want to do that. So it's all about the fast laps, the pole positions. We've already had qualifying. Now it's go time to see how many you can get in the race.
We've already had our first round of the season down at Homestead Miami Speedway, beginning of March. Conditions were hot. Well, now we're at Circuit of the Americas, where things have cooled off quite a bit. Up next is Road Atlanta toward the end of May, then a little bit of a summer break before we head to Montreal for the Formula One calendar, where we race alongside them in the middle of June. Then off to wine country in the middle of July. We go to Sonoma from Road America, and then finale Mondiale in Italy. But where are we now?
We are at Circuit of the Americas, the purpose-built Formula One circuit just outside of Austin, Texas. In fact, you can see Austin in the background if you look closely from the grandstands and all of that. It is a 3.4-mile ribbon of asphalt that was designed and built purposely to house and host the Formula One circuit here in the U.S. 20 turns, 3.4 miles, like I said, all kinds of elevation change, up a 5-story climb to turn 1, and then you've got this section of corners 2 through 10 at ever-decreasing speeds. They start at about 130 and then work their way down. Then you get to turn 11, one of the slowest corners on the racetrack, rocket up to over 165 miles an hour as you head down to turn 12. On the brakes again, twisty bits from turn 12 through 15, big carousel 16, 17, race down the hill through 19, about an 80-mile-an-hour apex there to turn 20, one of the most important corners on the racetrack because it finishes the good lap that you're on and sets up the next one that will hopefully take you to the checkered flag, Shay.
I mentioned that it's a bit cooler out there than we are used to, but it's also a bit windier, as you can tell from the camera, just shaking ever so slightly. Brian and I are lucky to be warm in the booth. I'm sorry to say that, Amanda, to put it that way. I hate when people do that to me. But what's it like for you right now? Getting any better?
Well, I was absolutely going to point that out because where you guys are is in the toasty booth, and where we are is on the chilly front stretch here at Cota. You were talking about the wind. You can see the flags behind us that are ripping through as you turn into turn 1. We are a little protected here with the building on the front stretch, but the weather has been the topic of the day. It does look like we're going to avoid the R word here today, but the track temps and temperature, the ambient temperature, has been what everyone has been discussing. The cars are out on their recon laps right now. There will be a formation lap to hopefully help get some of those temperatures into the car. But when we think about the grid today, I do want to point out one little change. There was David Perveronen, who had qualified in the P3 spot. He is going to slot himself to the back of the field. He missed tech after that session. So a good opportunity for the new driver to work his way through traffic. But back on that front row, you're going to have Gray Favre, who started P4 yesterday. He took the pole here today after that win yesterday. And Cyril Chotsky is right there, right next to him, seeing if he can get the win here at Cota. But first, let's see what he thinks about a lap around the Circuit of the Americas.
Hi, I'm Cyril Chotsky, car 173, racing for Ferrari of Denver and HB Tech. Come join me for a lap at Circuit of the Americas. And we're heading up the front straight at Circuit of the Americas. You can brake later than you think as you're going uphill, just before the 100, downshifting from 6th to 3rd gear, getting to power quickly after the turn and setting up for turn 2, where it's very important to get to full power as you're on the curbing. Leading into turn 3, we lift after the bridge, a little bit of brake into turn 4, into the S's, which are notoriously tricky and all about rhythm. Into 6, back to full power, a left-hander into 7, and then up the hill to 8. Important to stay to the right, and then quickly back to the left for turn 9 to set up for the kink, full power. Upshifting to 5th, and ultimately to 6th as you lead down to turn 11, the hairpin, braking at the 100, heavy braking, downshift to 3rd. Important to rotate the car quickly to get to power, to now get onto the longest straight leading up to turn 12. This is a great time to reset, grab a drink, and prepare for turn 12, which is a down the hill, heavy braking zone, braking at around the 150. Around turn 12, back to full power, upshifting to 4th, braking into turn 13, not going to throttle too early, but now going flat into 4th gear, and then braking late into 14, all the way around 15, and getting to power right at the apex, full power, heading to the bridge, flat, lifting slightly just at the bridge, gradually adding power as you go around the carousel so as not to upset the car, but to maximize speed, exiting turn 17 and 18. Now a left-hander at 19, back to full power, up to 5th gear, braking at the access road to prepare for the last turn, turn 20, and back on to the first straight. That's a lap at Circuit of the Americas.
It worked for Cyril Choksi as well. It wasn't another pole position. Yesterday it was, though, Brian. Today, he does get the front row start, and that's important for his confidence.
Well, it is important for his confidence and his championship lead because he's leading the category right now. But what you saw in that lap, and Shay, you and I have talked about this, was a coolness. It's the same coolness that I assume he has in the boardroom when he is at work at his data systems company. So it's one of those deals that, you know, a lot of these drivers take that business acumen, that risk versus reward kind of attitude, and you apply them. When should I go for it? When should I not? When should I hold my cards? When should I lay them down? And that's what has brought him his first race win back at Homestead. It's what brought him the pole yesterday. Misses out on it a little bit today, but he's right there. And really the big picture, I think, for him is the championship at the end of the season.
Exactly, and looking forward to some of the tracks coming up. Yes, he has experience at, for example, Sonoma, having raced there last year, but a lot of the other ones, they're new. So he's got to capitalize where he can. Racing at Circuit of the Americas last year, this was a familiar place to come back to. For Cyril, that's a big advantage.
Well, it is, but every one of these drivers we've talked about has a driver coach. His is Robbie Foley, the BMW factory driver. Robbie is a great talent, not only behind the wheel, but I also think he's a great coach. And just because you're a fast race car driver doesn't make you a great coach. You've got to be able to impart the wisdom and the confidence and what it takes to get the job done. I think he can, and he and Cyril have a great relationship. So even when they go to racetracks where he has not competed before, I think Robbie Foley will have him up to speed.
That's true. Robbie Foley's a big ace up the sleeve, but for Cyril Choksi, the biggest thing that he's worried about at the start of this race, Gray Favre, who won the race yesterday and starts on pole position, but right behind him, Cameron Root, who came into this weekend as the championship leader. He now trails Cyril by a measly 1 point. We caught up with Cameron a little bit earlier in the week to get to know the young man.
Obviously, first, I'm a big Ferrari fan. My wife for Christmas surprised me with Corsa Pelota. She gave me the first two. Of course, I loved it, and then did the next two the exact same year, and this is the natural progression. The success we had at Homestead was definitely a surprise to everybody. My whole family was their goal was for me to finish the race. Obviously, I wanted to do better than that, but I think it's kind of raised the expectations now moving forward. Finish the race is still the first priority, and then I love to try to continue to get podiums.
Cameron Root with a great debut at Homestead. It was bit extraordinary that somebody comes in having never raced in this championship before, a second and a first, and the fastest lap in that second race. But I talked with Cameron Rooten's sister actually just before lunch, who said that they've been racing their entire lives. Their dad raced back in the day, and for Cameron in particular, it was rally driving. It was doing whatever he could on their property, just trying to get behind the wheel of something. Now he's got the opportunity to get behind the wheel of a Ferrari, and he's doing that very well.
Well, he is. And, these starts at Circuit of the America are always interesting, Shay. You know that's going to be a drag race up the front straightaway into turn one. And if I'm Gray Favre and Cyril Choksi, I'm sitting there going, I'm not as much concerned about the driver who is beside me, whether it's my left or my right. I'm going to have like one eye kind of like a lizard. One's going to be straight ahead, and the other one's going to be on that rear view camera, right, that's in there, because that's where the threat is coming from up in turn one at the start.
The draft is massive here, particularly down the two straights, as we've talked about over the course of the weekend. But into turn one, where there are so many potential lines where you can make it through, or maybe not make it through if you choose the wrong one, that's going to be the real big opportunity for the second row. It's Cameron Root and Eric Marsden lining up on that second row. They are, in essence, in the catbird seat.
Well, and here's the thing. As a race director, which I am someplace else, you can tell drivers all you want. You can't win the race in the first turn, but you know what? They're going to try every time, Amanda.
Well, guys, I was thinking back to yesterday, and if it wasn't the actual prancing horse that we saw to kick off the racing days, it was my favorite part of yesterday. It was probably the battle in that Coppa shell and between Lisa Clark and Dan Cornish, and I think we're going to get treated to that yet again here today. They are going to start on the front row in that class. Dan snuck the win yesterday. He also picks up pole here today, but we know what Lisa is capable of just if you compare the performances she's had just starting out this season. But what I got to point out to be the MVPs this weekend and the stands, there were fans here yesterday, but even today we have fans in the crowd with blankets and their sweatshirts ready to kick off this race. You think about this grid, Brian, you were talking about yesterday of how this paddock is such a family, and I got to go to the Langbirds. Neil Langberg races, you'll see on the side of his car, it says Race for RP. That is in honor of his wife, Nancy, who you will see on pit lane. I've seen her several times this weekend with a huge smile and a big hug. Let's learn more about Neil.
This is Neil Langberg. I drive for Scuderia Corsa, the number 153 Race for RP car. I bought my first Ferrari, I believe, in 2004. And there were two perks at the time. One was a trip to the factory and viewing how these beautiful machines get made. The other one was the opportunity to participate what at that time was called the Ferrari driving experience, now called Corsa Pilota. And it's a way to improve my abilities to get closer to the capabilities of these amazing cars. I started racing competitively in this series, the Ferrari Challenge Series, in 2016. Which was about the same time that my wife unfortunately was diagnosed with a very rare but deadly autoimmune disease known as relapsing polychondritis. And so not only do I have the joy of racing, but I have the joy of taking what would have been one of our terrible personal defeats and turning it into a good thing, to raise awareness for autoimmune disease in general, and of course for her disease specifically. What keeps me coming back to the paddock is the people. We've been to places and met people we never ever would have had exposure to without the beneficence of Ferrari North America, but also just this wonderful group of folks. For Cota, I love this track. It's probably the one I've been to the most. I've told people time and time again, I have 3 goals on a racing weekend: to finish the race, not be last, and without incident. Look for that when you watch me on the track this weekend.
Neil Langberg and his wife Nancy, some of the best people that you will find in the paddock, and always, always, always happy to be here. And Amanda, if you could please give Nancy a hug for me too the next time you see her. All right, we got to get these Ferrari engines fired, and we've got a very special guest to do it here today. It's Mark Genet, who's going to give those most famous words in motorsport.
Drivers, start your Ferrari engines.
Hey, they listened to him too, Brian?
They did. And you know why he has a smile on his face? Well, he got to say, driver, start your engines. He's also spent time in that Formula One car this weekend doing some demonstration laps. This is not a bad gig for Marc Genet.
No, definitely not. The 2011 version of the Formula One car from Ferrari that Fernando Alonso drove to victory at the British Grand Prix that year, and also podiums at other races such as, well, Monaco. I think he wound up with maybe 9 or 10 podiums total on the season.
The other day.
Very impressive, and still 4th in the championship that year. The competition was stout.
And Marc Genet, obviously a very accomplished driver, and has the opportunity of being associated with Ferrari to get behind the wheel of that car here, and it thrills the fans. And you know what? I think it probably still thrills Marc Genet every time that engine fires up and he puts it in gear and leaves pit lane.
We've got the cars fired, which means that Richard is now standing at the head of the grid behind the Ferrari safety car that begins to roll away. He holds out his arms, indicating to the cars, stay to either side, stay to your lanes, stay side by side, at least rolling off the grid, and then you can begin your warm-up process. That'll include some pretty hard braking, some hard accelerating, maybe a bit of weaving side to side, but it's all an effort to get those Pirellis up to temp so that when we go into turn 1, they can do the moves that they're aiming for. All right, race 4 of the season set to get underway for the Coppa Shell category, and we've got a beautiful grid. Our pole sitter is Gray Favre, race winner yesterday. Let's see if he can do it again. Points leader Cyril Choksi is alongside him. Cameron Root and Eric Marsden will have the best shot going into turn 1, and then it's John Viscup and Ray Acosta for the 3rd row. Starting 7th, Bruce Cleveland, and 8th is Lance Colley for Ferrari of Atlanta. 9th on the grid is Jan Bernier, and rounding out the top 10 is Frank Sesniak. For the 11th position, we find Mike Luley, the gentleman leader in points, and Matt Dalton is 12th. Tor Haugen is 13th, and Robert McWilliams will start 14th. It's Steve Check in 15th, and then Roger Monteforte in 16th. 17th is Paul Lynn, and completing the grid in 18th is David Veronin. We've got our Shell Am pole sitter, that's Dan Cornish, starting 19th with Lisa Clark for company. Darren Bernstein is 3rd in that category with Jeff Nunberg for company. Next row back, we find Dana Goodwin and Anthony DiCarlo in the 24th position. Neil Langberg, who we just heard from, is 25th. And finally, on the grid, Luis Peruzquia and Dan Williams completing our 27 cars set to take the green flag. I think we're going to have 26, but we'll have to see after they go around for the first time and the timing loop is triggered.
All right, so you've got your plan, right? And if you're...
I've got no plan.
It depends on the position that you're in. If you're on pole, you know that when you take that green, you want to stay driver's left. You want to protect that inside line, kind of throw away the apex speed. It's only about 40 miles an hour anyway. On a good lap, you want to kind of protect that inside, not let anybody get there, and kind of get on that left rear wheel of you and turn you around. If you're outside the front row, well, you're thinking, you know what, I'll just go around the outside.
Yeah.
I can turn in a little bit later so I can brake a little bit later. But if you don't stay tucked up against the pole sitter, left side door to right side door, when you get there, you're going to invite somebody into that space. It's probably going to close down pretty quickly, so you don't want to invite them to do something that they're going to regret and that you're going to regret. If you're sitting in 3rd, you're sitting back there waiting to say, well, do I have a shot inside? Do I have a shot outside? Where am I going? Wherever you are, it's kind of a different mindset of how you're going to get there, but most importantly, you want to get through. Not just get there, meaning turn 1, you want to get through it.
What's the famous adage? You can't win the race in turn 1, but you sure can lose it. Circuit of the Americas is the exception in the rule book for that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, as I was saying earlier, you know, as a race director, you say that in almost every driver briefing. You say, you know, you can't win the race in the first turn, but you can certainly lose it. And I would like to think that everybody subscribes to that, but it's amazing that once the engines start and you look up that hill as you're going into that corner, how some of that can be forgotten.
Safety car lights are out as it dives into the pit lane, and we stay in this beautiful 2x2 formation. Now, they have to stay side by side going through turn 20, and they don't get to decide when the green flag comes out. That is firmly in the controller of the person in the start stand, who right now happens to be Marc Genet. Marc Genet knows green flags very well. He gets the tap, waves the green flag, and away we go as people coming way out of line formation early on. Race control is going to look at that. No passing, though. That's important to note. And Cyril Choksi going around the outside. Can he make it stick? Yes, he can.
That was absolutely beautiful. It's what I talked about. Have a plan. His plan was, I'm going for a later turn in so I can brake a little bit later, but can he hold it as they head into 3? Into the S's? No.
Is he going to lose another spot? Cameron Root is now massively on it. Did Cyril maybe not get as much heat into his tires on that pace lap as he needed? Because Grey Favre back to the front and running away already. They're about halfway through the lap, and Grey Favre has a big advantage.
I think Cyril needs to kind of dig deep and go, I have the ability to do this. Yes, I know the tires are cold, but I cannot let it get away. And I just think that Favre was just willing to gamble a little bit more that the grip and the Pirellis was going to be there. And he just laid it down and said, here we go. And lo and behold, he had the traction.
He did, and that's a big part of the game as Eric Marsden goes for a spin. I think that is the car number 126. And indeed, it is. That just looked like a little bit maybe too much on the curb.
Yeah, I couldn't really tell. It happened just out of camera shot. Either that or I wasn't looking at it. But anyway, he is around, gets it refired, restarted. Not bad. Good job to get out of the way.
Whew.
Did a good job to stay on the brakes and not let the car roll backwards a lot. Right of the screen, I think he does it on his own.
Yep, no one around. So that's the good news for race control. They won't have to look into this as a potential issue amongst multiple cars. But I think if we look further back into Shell AM, I think that was Lisa Clark ahead of Dan Cornish. Now, we'll wait until they cross the start-finish line to know for sure. Cameron Root, though, he is fired up, and we saw him driving super impressively yesterday. For Cyril Choksi, it's a worst-case scenario, having a little terrier in your rearview mirror who wants your position.
Yeah, and for Cyril Choski, I'm sure that he's telling himself, come on, you got this, just focus. Robbie Foley probably in his ear going, no worries, good start, great start, you've showed them that you're here, now let's get back in this fight, lay down the laps, focus on what it is that you're doing, forget the car that's behind you, I'll let you know if he becomes more of a threat.
David Veronin is the last car in the Shell class right now, the Coppa Shell class. Lisa Clark is gone. She has cleared off and put 2 Shell cars between herself and Jeff Nunberg, who's now up into second place. Excellent start by Jeff, as now, no, it is a battle for the lead between Jeff and Lisa, and Jeff Nunberg goes through. Was that Jeff or was that another car I was getting all excited about? My apologies. That might have been a Coppa Shell car getting around Lisa Clark. But she is at the head of that field.
And look for the different window banners, the shade banners at the top. The yellow indicates Coppa Shell, and the black indicates Coppa Shell AM. So Lisa Clark, the orange and blue car, you'll notice that black window shade indicating that she is indeed the leader in Coppa Shell AM.
Yeah, my apologies. That was Roger Monteforte getting back around Lisa. The two of them battling for overall position, but the class position is firmly in the hands of Lisa.
How did that happen? I've got to think it happened up in turn 1. Now Dan Cornish looking to the inside
of
in
Jeff
his yellow
Nunberg.
and black 163.
And gets the pass done on Jeff Nunberg as Jeff gets pushed out a little bit wide. Now it's a drag race, and Jeff Nunberg had the preferred line and a little bit more momentum. Can Cornish hang it out there and make the pass as they go into turn 12?
Down into 12. Lisa Clark sandwiched between the 2 Coppa Shell cars. Now Dan Cornish in that yellow and black Ferrari slides up the inside, takes the position back, giving each other a lot of room and a lot of respect there. And that's one of the things that they talked about in the driver briefing. Todd Snyder, the race director, saying, you guys need to show some more respect, showing videos from yesterday saying, this is a good pass. This is not. Remember, this is the least experienced group of the Ferrari Challenge competitors. They're still learning every lap, and the art of passing, both passing and being passed, it's one that has to be learned. You can't just throw it in there.
That's the biggest thing that I get out of the drivers' meetings. The onus of passing is on both drivers.
Oh, absolutely.
The responsibility is not just the car passing. It's for both of you to stay clean. As now Dan Cornish looking up the inside of Tor Haugen, trying to make a pass on car number, no, that was Paul Lynn in call number 195 to get a clean pass and then try and make it back up to Lisa Clark. This race went completely green yesterday. So for Coppa Shell, they realize I need speed if I'm going to get to my competition.
Well, yesterday was yesterday.
That's true.
Whether it goes green all the way today, that's another thing altogether. Ray Acosta aboard the green.
Amanda, you saw the race yesterday. What do you think? Are we going to stay green today?
You know, you got to be impressed with this group. You look at qualifying in these sessions, and well, Shay, there you might have it. But I do want to talk about the concept. Brian, I talked to you earlier in the drivers' meeting, and you were talking about how an incident may be one driver's 100% fault, but that doesn't mean that the other driver isn't 100% not at fault. Can you explain that a little more?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's real simple. You got two cars side by side, but I'm going to step away from that for just a second. Lisa Clark with a problem mired in the gravel.
Beached
we'll have
quite
to
heavily.
see what happened. Any way you look at it, she's going to lose a lap. But basically, let's take a look. I think we can find out what happened to Lisa Clark. This
She's
is
off
not at
in
all
the
what she
S's.
needed. It's in the S's.
Yeah, and she's heavily into the gravel. But did she get some help there from the car behind? She does have a problem with the right rear. I don't know if something broke on her car or if it was a result of contact, as the full course caution is out. We have gone yellow, and Lisa will need help to get extracted from that gravel pit.
Oh, this is not at all what she needed. The safety car is out. It will gather up the field. Let's look at it again. Top of the screen. Something breaks. She either loses a tire or, yeah, she
Right
loses
rear
a tire.
is down, but I'm not sure if that happened as a result of contact with the car behind her.
Yeah, the car behind her, well, it could have happened up in turn one,
Yes.
perhaps, but it didn't happen there at the entry to the S's. The other car was well enough behind. But here's the thing. In the beginning of these races, you start with a lower pressure in the tire because you know it's going to build. And the engineers are very, very conscious of making sure that they give you enough pressure to not make it dangerous so that the tire doesn't roll off. But anytime the tire is somewhat lower inflated, if you get on the curbs, if you get on what we call these sausage curbs, the yellow ones that are behind the red and white track out curbings, any sharp blow to a tire that has a little bit of underinflation to it can damage the sidewall, and then you'll lose it. These Pirelli tires are very, very strong. You don't see them fail on their own. It usually takes some outside influence, like I was saying, either one of those curbings or a dive plane or a splitter on the front end of another Ferrari.
Yep, and we'll have to wait and find out what precipitated that incident for Lisa Clark. But the important thing now comes from Dan Cornish and his coach. Get on the radio and say, Dan, you're 10 points behind Lisa coming into the race today. She's probably going to get minimum points. We just need to bring it home.
Yeah, bring it home.
Don't do anything silly. Don't try and defend for the win if it's not on. Just be smart.
And I know somebody will say, well, I hate points racing. You're not points racing. You're
No.
intelligently racing. You're looking to the end of the season for a championship. That would not be telling Dan Cornish, hey, don't worry about winning this race. You can just kind of get rid of it. No, you want fast lap. You want to win the race. You just don't want to risk any more than you need to in order for that to happen, because your nearest competitor in the championship is out. Now let's get back to what Amanda was talking about. Yeah, you can have two cars that get into the side of each other. If you head into the corner and you've got the preferred line on the inside, or somebody, let's say somebody's kind of sticking their nose in, they're not quite there yet, and you go, hey, it's my corner. I've got the lead, the advantage. Well, you can turn in and the other driver can take their foot off the brake and end up running into you and hitting you. It's their fault, right? They're 100% at fault for not controlling their vehicle and hitting you after you've turned in. But if you knew they were there and you turned in anyway, it doesn't matter what kind of penalty they get.
Yeah.
They're 100% at fault, but it doesn't mean you're 100% innocent. You could have kept that from happening, perhaps, and gone on to race, maybe repassed them in the next corner, called it in on the radio and said that was unsafe, whatever the case may be. But if you force the issue as the innocent party and you get taken out, it doesn't matter what race control does to the other competitor. Your day is done.
Exactly. And I'm a big believer of racing karma. I think if somebody does something
come back,
wrong on the track, it does happen to come back around. So if you open your hands a little bit, like yesterday with what we saw with the Trofeo Pirelli race, Matt Krzyzewski opened his hands as to not hit Jason McCarthy as the two of them were going through turn one. Both guys wound up on the podium. So if you're driving smart, you're not going to wind up in the fence with the DNF. You might still wind up with the trophy at the end of the day.
A very wise man, and that wise man is Tony Kester. He's a driver coach here in Ferrari Challenge. I saw him yesterday. I love Tony. I've known him for, I don't want to say how many years because it's probably longer than you've been alive, Shay. But he told me once a long time ago, he goes, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, and the guy on the outside always loses. If you're the guy on the outside and the other person on the inside is at fault, you still have to be careful, once again, about fighting that battle, because if contact is made, you're the one that's going for the ride.
Well, while we're under yellow, we've got an opportunity to think back about the Ferrari racing days that we are still in the middle of experiencing. And Amanda, it's been pretty darn fun, hasn't it?
I think I've had the best view in the house for it. I know you guys are nice and toasty up in that booth, but I've had some spectacular moments here this weekend, and you just think of the pageantry of this weekend. Shay, you've been so diligent of going over the schedule and what racetracks we're going to hit this year, but I guarantee you see all of those drivers right there, the cars for that group photo we had here earlier today. The drivers have had this date circled for the reason of the celebration of Ferrari here at the Circuit of the Americas. We've talked to drivers throughout the paddock all weekend long, and all of them say how cool it is to be here knowing that F1 drivers race on the exact circuit, and to see Mark Genet take that F1 beauty around the track today. You talked about it, Shay, how the sounds of a Sunday morning for those to be whistling through the air here, it was just absolutely magical. And I said earlier that prancing horse may have been my favorite moment of the weekend. I imagine you guys have a couple too.
Yeah, I mean, there is something special and especially communicable when people ask you about, what do you do? Oh, I work in racing. And then they say, oh, like Formula One, do you go to the circuits where Formula One races? And when you can say, yeah, as a matter of fact, I got to drive my Ferrari on one of those circuits. That just makes things a little bit more relatable to your friends and family. Perhaps you've got people out there who love watching Drive to Survive.
Well, and again, this paddock is one of the friendliest paddocks I've ever been in. And if you want to get to a Ferrari Challenge event and walk through the paddock and see these beautiful cars, please do it. It is so worth it. But I want to set the record straight on something. It is not easy up here. Amanda kind of giving us a hard time for being in the warm booth. Because we've been doing it throughout the weekend. It's about 72 degrees in here, and we have to hurry through our ice cream because it melts pretty quickly that we've been having.
Mean.
So it's not all fun and games.
No, as a pit reporter, I refuse to indulge in that because I have been the person out there freezing with the hair blowing in completely the wrong direction.
I have to.
Here
I hate it when my
before,
hair blows.
Your hair does blow quite badly, Brian. We all three are very well versed at being out in the elements, and so Amanda,
standing in the rain and the cold. Yes,
yeah.
I feel your pain, Amanda. It's not raining today, which is a good thing, but
I appreciate
we've all done
you. Yep, and I appreciate you and the effort that you're putting in today. This is a little bit of a reset that we are under right now. The FCY is still out for Lisa Clark, who went off the gravel at the S's. And we are waiting for race control to give us the all clear. It looked like they were able to extract her car from the gravel. But with that issue on the right rear, perhaps it wasn't just a flat toe that they could do to pull her back behind the wall. Might be a little bit more extensive, which is why we are still under yellow.
Well, the lights are out on the safety car, so we're going to go back to racing this time by. This circuit is built with escape roads and roads to get disabled cars back. It's one of the best safety operations I've been involved with in any racetrack. They get the job done correctly. They get it done quickly. It allows us to go back to racing. But I don't know what the deal was. I do remember Lisa Clark. Remember the two cars side by side when we thought they were fighting for the lead? She actually went inside, the big orange marker at the apex of turn one. Could have cut the tire there. She was well inside the apex. And so it's one of those deals where, was it that, or was there a rub on another car, left front to right rear that created that problem? But anyway, when she got that load in the car turning in there for the high-speed S's, it was either the suspension or the tire that said, I cannot do this anymore. Day done. Well, hopefully not day done. Hopefully they can get another tire on it, but
we'll see. The safety car is into the pit lane. Cars are lying astern as Grey Favre, yesterday's race winner, has our championship leader showing the nose, just saying, I'm here.
Completely different rules. Now we got a car around on the restart.
Frank Szczesniak going for a spin out of turn 20. Not sure if there was some assistance there, but he does recover and get his right foot planted, he's going to lose a lot of spots.
Well, what I was going to say is completely different rules on a restart. As they come off the corner, they're told to accelerate off the corner. The green flag will fly, and as soon as it does, you're racing. So they're in the throttle early there, and you're trying to get up to speed quickly. And I don't know if just a little bit of wheel spin, perhaps that traction control should have been turned up a notch or two on the restart, but got bitten there. But for Grey Favre, out in front, big jump there, and he's got the advantage coming off the corner. He can decide where to pull the trigger when he wants to go, and he gets that little leap on the restart.
Yeah, everyone behaving themselves nicely. Race control giving them a lot of credit in the drivers' meeting, saying that they did everything right, but they had an all-green race. Then explaining what you do in the case of a yellow. I think our competitors were actually listening.
You know, I'm so impressed with this group of drivers in all of the classes. 2 classes, but then divisions of the classes as well. And again, the Coppa Shell Am group, the least experience of all of them, and we have seen great racing throughout the weekend. Some very talented drivers who will do nothing but get quicker and better as time goes on with the experience that they gain. And so I'm looking forward to watching a lot more Ferrari Challenge in the future. The racing is awesome, and for Cyril Choksi right now, this is an opportunity for him to regroup. This restart is kind of a regroup deal for him to see if he can hold on to the back of the 197 in front of him.
I'm not going to say anything yet because I don't want to curse to the commentator, but we currently have a driver in a podium position who's never been there before. So that would be exciting. I didn't say who it was. I'm just putting it out there. I'm quite excited about the possibility of that as the battle for the lead is on. Grey Favre with his mirrors well and truly full of the blue and green and white car of Cyril Choksi.
And that's what we talked about. This was an opportunity for a reset. Now Cameron Root right behind, and Favre gets a great run off of turn 20. You can see the car just kind of leap out a little bit. Perhaps Choksi has a little too much traction control right now. You need a little bit of wheel spin. You need that little bit of slip angle in the tire to maximize it. And now Favre wide at the exit of 1. Choksi's through.
And here's Cameron Root hounding the back of Grey Favre after that mistake going through turn 1. That's all it takes, the tiniest little bit of a hiccup, and all of a sudden you're first. Nope, now you're holding on to second, but you're looking at third.
Oh, and a little mistake by Choksi there. He got in a little bit early with the turn in. That put him wide at the exit. Oh, and Choksi's around.
Can he keep it out of the barriers? Oh, just barely kisses it. Knocks the headlight cover off of the left rear light. Now he's waiting for the opportunity to safely rejoin. This is painful for Cyril, as now he does get back underway. He's ahead of Mike Luley, so he's still just barely in the top 10, but from fighting for the lead to fighting to stay in the top 10.
Well, he was fighting for the lead, then he took the lead, and now he's fighting to stay in the top 10. But that mistake that bit him there actually happened 2 corners before that. And it's just one of those sections of the racetrack that when they designed it, they said, we're going to let you make a little mistake here, and it's going to get bigger, and then it's going to get bigger. And that's exactly what happened. Got in a little early into turn 3, meaning he entered the corner a little bit early, which means you're going to have to tighten your hands a lot at the exit. And then the mistake just kind of builds, and it's really, really hard. If you don't realize it and catch it right off the bat, it's just going to get bigger to the point that you can't control it.
Okay, so Grey Favre made a mistake going into turn 1. He knows that. He's recovering from that, but he just saw his competition make an even bigger mistake that wound up with car damage. Now you've got Cameron Root in his rearview mirror. How hard is it going to be to calm down Grey Favre?
Or how hard is it going to be to not let Cameron Root go crazy because he's seen 2 mistakes in front of him and he's like, I got this, right? So he's doing a great job. He's running really, really well. He has all weekend long. He just needs to do what he's doing. Don't drive outside your ability, outside the ability of the car, because if he does just that and stays within the ability of himself in the car, he will be up on the rear wing of Favre and he'll have a shot at the lead of this race.
Well, and now all of a sudden John Viscup is up looking at potential podium finish. That would be his first ever top 5 finish. So John Viscup is going, okay, just do what I'm supposed to do. Let's just go through the program. It's fine. But Ray Acosta, right behind Viscup, well, he's got other plans as well because he likes trophies and he hasn't had one this year. I love this racing.
It's really good stuff. And to think about a 670 plus horsepower sports car with drivers without a lot of experience, this car's capable of speeds of over 200 miles an hour if you give it a long enough straightaway and you take some of the downforce out of it. Here, we're just over 165 miles an hour at the end of the back straightaway. This is a serious race car. And for these drivers who do not make their living doing this, not even close to making their living doing this, this is quite the show. They're doing a great job.
David Veronin has had a spectacular race so far. It's been quiet for him, but remember, he was moved to the back of the grid after Tech for not reporting to Tech. Oh no, Neil Langberg is in the gravel now. Hopefully he can get out of that. But David Veronin is all the way from 18th to 6th. No, 5th, because he did pass Lance Colley going into turn 12. All right, what happened to Neilio? Ooh, dive bomb on Neilio. That was left front contact to right rear. So who was it that hit him? Couldn't tell. It was an all red Ferrari, so somebody is out there with damage. We've got lights on a recovery vehicle. Now if they're spaced out enough, we can get to him. Hearing now that it might have been Dana Goodwin who was involved in the contact with Neil Langberg. Thank you, Amanda. As the full course caution flies once again, David Veronin, though, all the way up to 5th place from starting dead last, as Cyril Choksi did come into the pit lane after that contact out on the track, where he remains. He is about to go a lap down to our leader, Gray Favre, who, by the way, also holds the fastest lap of the race. That's a bonus point.
Kind of surprised to see Choksi on pit lane. I didn't think there was enough damage to bring him in. Now, these cars are very sophisticated and with a lot of road-going technology in them. They don't like rolling backwards. All kinds of alarms and bells and whistles go off when that happens, and a lot of times they'll go into a fail-safe mode. You need to reset a lot of the computerized equipment in it, almost like when your laptop at home has a problem, you got to do a Control-Alt-Delete, right, and get it back. The cars are the same way, and so perhaps that's what's going on with Choksi. I didn't think he had substantial damage to the vehicle. That is not the case for the two cars that we just saw with the contact in turn 3.
Yeah, Amanda, are you hearing any more down in the pit lane?
I think sometimes you have to Control-Alt-Delete your mindset as well. And you guys were talking about David Veronin. I talked to him right before this race, and he was super bummed about that penalty that was going to put him to the back of the grid. And Shay and Brian, we were in hospitality yesterday, and remember David just ran over to us so excited about the commentary that was happening on the broadcast. So you know he's absolutely loving the experience, but that goes to the highs and lows in racing, and sometimes there's more of the other that you have to face through. But when you think of the growth of a driver, Brian, Shay, how important are moments just like this to Control-Alt-Delete that mindset, start on the back of the grid and work your way through traffic? He has to be proud of what he's done here today.
Here's the thing. I mean, that's where the coaches come in as well. And, I go back to top players in all sports have coaches. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with having coaches. And your coach here is the one that's responsible for saying, you need to stay calm. If we just get a couple of full course yellows in this thing, you're back in it. What do we have? A couple of full course yellows, and we're back in it. We're going to have another restart here in a couple of laps. And for David Veronin, he's now up to 6th, and his nearest competitors aren't up the road. They're right there in front of him. So a podium position is not out of reach by any stretch of the imagination.
This is exactly the situation that our mutual friend Joe Bradley calls character building.
Yep.
Because you start at the back, you think your day is over, you think this is a waste, I'm not going to bother doing this, why would I go out and run around at the back? Then all of a sudden, at the end of the day, you could be walking away with a trophy that means more to you than any other one you've ever had. And that's when you realize this love of racing, because when we say anything can happen, that's one thing. When you experience it, that's a completely different thing.
Well, and I mean, Joe Bradley, what a guy, he's so smart, and that is the perfect explanation
don't call
of
him
it.
smart.
Yeah, well, his head will get big. But it's one of those things where you look at it, and this is the one time the driver coach at the end of the race, if it turns out even better than where it is right now, will look at him and say, I told you so.
Yep.
Remember this going forward. I told you so. We can do this. Anything can happen, kind of thing. And he'll look at that and go, yeah, maybe I should have been a little more calm. I got it. This is good. Boom. And he's done a great job. He's done a great job because the traffic that he's had to work through to get to where he is has been intense.
Yeah.
Now it's time to put his head down, and for the next 5 minutes, he's got a shot at this. So he's going to have probably 3 laps?
3 laps, yep, because the lights are out on the safety car, which means that it will be pulling back into the pit lane as soon as we get through the exit of turn 19. And remember, as soon as the green flag comes out, it's fair game. You can pass people. You don't have to wait until the control line of the start line as you do on the start of this race. And I say start line because the start and finish are in 2 different places at this track. One of the anomalies of racing here, I think it's here in Mid-Ohio, are the 2 circuits in this country that are that way.
Well, and the good thing, though, is the green flag is waved on restart, Shay, at the finish line, which is close to the corner, so you know it's going to come out really quickly. And the fact of the matter is, if you're on it right now, you'd better be ready to go, because when it comes out, you can pass.
Gray Favre keeping them all super close together, and here comes David Veronin peeking out early.
Well, he went wide to get the run through the corner. He was ready. He was ready to pull the trigger, and you look at him, he's the 6th car in the line, up against driver's left, the white with the black nose on it. Let's see if he can gain some positions here. Whoa, and Cameron wide, Veronin wide.
Wow, David Veronin holding on to that one just barely as Lance Colley is still in the 5th position. Ray Acosta clearing off in 4th, and there is a good gap between our top 3 as they run now.
Here's the deal. That was cold carbon brakes. That's all that was up into turn 1 for several of the competitors. Got up there, they have to have temperature. Brakes work with temperature, and carbon brakes especially have to have temperature. And if you let them cool off at all before you came around for this restart, you'll go to the pedal in turn 1. It'll be hard as a rock, but guess what?
You're not going to slow down.
It doesn't slow down. And it's the worst feeling in the world because you're on the pedal, but really there's not a lot happening until finally the temperature is generated, the ABS begins to work, and you feel like the parachute got thrown out. But there is a heart-stopping moment for sure.
Just a quick checkup in the Shell Am class. It is still Dan Cornish leading the way with Jeff Nunberg in 2nd, and the fastest lap going the way of car 141 for Ferrari of Central New Jersey. Jeff Nunberg will be thrilled with that result. In 3rd is Darren Bernstein in car number 169. So in the Shell Am class, we've got a very different looking podium to what we saw yesterday. Different order, I should say, for some of it.
And David Veronin really beginning to now put the pressure on the 176 just in front of him with Colley.
Lance Colley is a cool cat, though. He's been in this series for long enough. He knows what it's like when these youngsters come in and they've got the bit between their teeth. Lance is going to sit back there and go, I like my car without any damage on it. Thank you very much. I'm very impressed by John Viscoup as well from Boardwalk Ferrari, running in the 3rd position. This would be a first podium for him. Ray Acosta is about half a second back. That's not done for the final step on the podium by any means, as Gray Favre comes around, and it is the white flag waving proudly in the air. So Gray Favre, 1 more lap. Cameron Root 2nd. Then we find the battle for 3rd, John Viscoup and Ray Acosta. And then the battle for 5th, Lance Colley and David Veronin. Dan Cornish down 2 positions off that restart. Only 1 shell car between himself and Jeff Nunberg. So the Coppa Shell class not playing as much of a spoiler as it did yesterday.
David Veronin still hounding Colley in front, looks inside, going to the S's there at the top of the screen. As Ray Acosta trying to crawl his way up to Viscoup just in front.
This would be a great result for Ray Acosta, making the move up to this class from last year, running in the Shell Am category. He had 2 results outside of the top 10 at Homestead, so finishing just off the podium, it's exactly where Ray Acosta wants to be. Actually, he wants to be on the top step of the podium, but as far as progress is concerned, Cyril Choksi back out of the pit lane, has a spin at the first part of the S's, manages to pull off the track onto the grass, and then get restarted. Let's see if we can find out what happened to Cyril. Was it on his own? Oh, that started very early, Brian. That was underneath the bridge coming through turn 3.
Yeah, that's an odd place to lose traction. Now, obviously, doesn't have a solid race car underneath him. There's an end plate missing off of the rear wing from the contact with the wall, so he's not going to have the same aerodynamic forces that he had.
Veronin got around Colley. Veronin's now looking at the back of 4th position, saying, hi, Ray Acosta, come here. I want that 4th position.
He doesn't have a lot of time, but he may have enough time. He's going to get another shot down in turn 20. I think he may be able to close the gap in time to get there to Ray Acosta.
Oh my
Acosta
gosh.
in the green and black Ferrari just in front.
Brian, I think this is a 3-car battle for the final step on the podium, because as soon as Acosta gets there, it's going to throw off Viscup, and then Viscup is going to have the onus on him to stay cool and claim his first trophy.
One more corner to go, and the checkered flag is just around the corner, but Veronin setting up for a big run through the apex, trying to get his sights set on Acosta. Acosta wide, Veronin's there, not enough in time. God,
Wow.
That was awesome.
That was spectacular. Grey Favre sweeping the weekend. 2 races, 2 wins, as crossing the line for Ferrari of Austin, it is Dan Cornish with 2 wins and a fast lap, still going the way of Jeff Nunberg, bringing it home in second for his first ever podium finish in the Ferrari Challenge North America. Congratulations, Jeff, from Ferrari of Central New Jersey. In third in the Shell Am class, it's Darren Bernstein. But our overall podium, Grey Favre, 2 races, 2 wins, pretty perfect. Cameron Root in second, and John Viscup with his first trophy as well. Gotta love this. All right, yesterday we heard from the dad, Brad Favre, after the race win, and it was just shock and awe. Amanda, does it feel a little bit more old hat by now?
No, I think it's almost still disbelief. I saw him shaking his head, taking in the moment. Your boy is going to leave with a lot of hardware here this weekend. How surreal is this moment?
Yeah, completely surreal. That was a much bigger battle, that run around, so I'm proud of how he handled himself in the traffic. That was really heads-up driving, so couldn't be happier.
Most important thing for Dad is that the car was kept clean and there's no crash damage. So
Well, there you go, right?
Makes it a much better party tonight for that family. And Brad's still with the race coming up here shortly. Now he's got to get his head in the zone and maybe go to his son and say, hey, any advice?
Well, there is that, and I'm sure that he's going to be able to give him something. He's going to tell him what the racetrack is like, right?
Yeah.
But you look at it and you think about the lessons that were learned today, and we talk about the Coppa Shell drivers, both in Coppa Shell and Coppa Shell Am, being newer, and they're going to learn their lessons. For David Veronin, he learned that, hey, I'm still in it, even though I have to start at the back. And I think one of the biggest lessons that's going to have to be learned is Lisa Clark watching battles like that. Hey, you may be out of it, but you're not out of it. Look at Grey Favre and what he's done, missing 2 races. She's disappointed. There is absolutely no doubt. I don't need to go talk to her. I don't need to see her. I know her personality. I know her as a race car driver. She's going to be disappointed. But when you look at this, you can see that it's possible. You can do it. You can stay in the hunt even when you have a bad day. You can't have a lot of bad days.
Nope.
But she's had a lot of good days.
She has. And for Dan Cornish, this is the best of days at the best of places. A man who's local to Austin can sleep in his own bed on these race weekends. I wonder if that made the difference.
I know you don't like to bet. We bet $1 yesterday on something, and I thought I won, and then you ended up winning at the end.
I'm never betting against Lisa.
But here's the thing. I'll bet that Dan Cornish is not going to go home and go to bed tonight. I mean, eventually he will. But when he said tequila and barbecue yesterday, and then today he told us, no, I just went home and went to bed. I didn't celebrate. I had another race. Guess what? He doesn't have a race tomorrow.
No, he's due a little bit of a celebration.
I would say
particularly
so.
After the performance we saw today, and we haven't yet seen the points, but I'm sure when we do, there will be a smile in Dan Cornish associated with that points chart. And as for the Shell, the Coppa Shell category, Cameron Root's going to have a pretty big smile on his face because he reclaims the championship lead after the rough day for Surreal Choxy. But the guy who's won both races, got fast lap in both races, and one of the pole positions, is slowly creeping back into the championship picture, going, hi.
And for Cameron Root, yeah, he'll be happy with second place points, and that's good, and he's back in the championship lead more than likely. But, as you said, there's somebody coming.
Exactly.
You know, he can hear the train coming down the tracks kind of thing, and it's like, you know, I need to stay ahead of this. And, you know, for Surreal Choxy, he's got to look at it and kind of like Lisa does. Hey, all right, had a little bit of a struggle today, but I'm going to put that behind us. We've had some good days. We've scored good points. We're right up there. We are still in this, and we have a long way to go.
Exactly. Championship is 7 weekends. This concludes the second weekend for the Coppa Shell category of runners. So we're nowhere near knowing who our champion's going to be yet.
Well, no, you talk about the schedule. We haven't gotten to, as you like to say, wine
And cheese.
Than cheese.
Yes, exactly. Haven't gotten into the meat of things
Yeah,
yet,
exactly.
Brian.
There you
Nicely done. Gray Favre, our race winner once again. Cameron Root finishing in second. Congratulations, John Visca. First podium of his career in Ferrari Challenge. We've got Ray Acosta in fourth. David Veronin with the drive back of the weekend so far in the fifth place. Lance Colley brings it home sixth. Then Bruce Cleveland in seventh. Matt Dalton with a good result in eighth. Jan Bernier and Frank Szczesniak ninth and 10th. In the 11th place was Mike Luley, our Gentleman Cup leader, and the winner of that trophy once again here today. Robert McWilliams was 12th, Eric Marsden 13th, then our Shell Am podium. Dan Cornish with the win, Jeff Nunberg in second, and Darren Bernstein, a pair of third-place finishes this weekend for him to take home. Thor Haugen was 18th overall, then Roger Monteforti in 18th, Thor Haugen was in 17th, Luis Peruzquia in 4th in class, and then Anthony DiCarlo in 5th for Shell Am. Steve Check, Paul Lynn were 21st and 22nd. David Williams, 23rd overall. Cyril Choksy, 24th overall. That's going to be a weekend to forget. Then Neil Langberg, Dana Goodwin, and Lisa Clark rounding out the field. Now, back to Amanda, because we have another winner to talk to.
Well, sometimes they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We saw Brad shaking his head. Gray gets out of his car, shaking his head inside of his helmet. Just in the disbelief of the moment of your father saying just how surreal all of this is. What is it for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that, surreal. I did not expect this at all coming into the week, so to get back-to-back wins is feels like a dream.
How motivating is this as you continue in your racing career?
Hugely. You know, every chance I get out here, I'd love to be out here. It makes me want to go more and get faster. So, yeah, just excited for what's to come.
Congratulations, Gray.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's see how the championship looks after this weekend, because Gray Favre, he's putting his spin on it. We know that after this weekend, he's in contention, even though he missed the first round at Homestead Miami Speedway. So it is still Cameron Root leading the way, as he was when we came into this weekend, but now an 11-point gap back to Cyril Choksy. And then is Gray Favre. 15 points off the championship lead, one race win after missing the first two of the season. And David Veronin will be very glad that he participated in the race today.
Absolutely.
26 points total for him. Lance Colley is fifth. Then Frank Szczesniak, Jan Bernier, John Viscup after that podium finds himself with 12 points on the season. Ray Acosta and Matt Dalton for the top 10. Bruce Cleveland, Eric Marsden, Mike Luley, and Paul Lynn. Those are our full season Coppa Shell competitors. Well, we have the man. We need to ask him what he's doing tonight, where he's going, Brian, because Dan Cornish is the guy from Austin who knows exactly where to party.
Dan, you sweep the weekend. I know you told us that you went home last night and got some sleep, so I'm going to ask you about what the celebrations are at hand, but I just want to go to the weekend that you've had from the battle yesterday with Lisa Clark to winning this race here today. What will be the leading memory for you from this experience?
It's like a fantasy. It's like a dream come true. I mean, here I am in my hometown. I've been coming to this track for a long time, and now I get to win a race in a Ferrari. I mean, and go home in a Ferrari. What gets better than that? Nothing.
The answer to the question that everyone wants to know: where and what and how are you celebrating, Dan?
6th Street. Here I come.
I think there's a lot of barbecue and tequila there. They'll be all right.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to have a ball. Thank you.
He's got his options cut out for him for sure, and Dan Cornish is going to want to see this next slide because, well, even though it's got his smiling face on it, the more important thing is where everyone stands in the championship after this weekend. Dan Cornish with 3 podiums out of 4 races on the season, including a couple of fastest laps. So Dan, 52 points into the lead, ahead of Lisa Clark by 6. Then is Darren Bernstein, 18 points off the lead. Luis Peruzquia is in 4th with 32. Jeff Nunberg vaults himself up, 19 points for him. And then Anthony DiCarlo in 6th, Dana Goodwin in 7th. Bubbles, who wasn't here this weekend, is still 8th in points. And then James Camp in 9th with David Williams rounding out the top 10. Neil Langberg is in 11th after today's troubles.
But here's what we see, and for these drivers who are down, and I get it. I mean, we talked about this. It's not over until it's over. There was a 10-point swing in the championship in Coppa Shell Am. We came into the weekend, Lisa Clark had a 10-point lead. Now she's 6 points behind, so really a 16-point swing there. But these swings of 8, 10, 15 points, they're going to happen throughout the year. You can't look at it right now and go, I'm 8 points out of the championship. There's no way. Oh my gosh, that can happen not just in one weekend, it can happen in one race.
Exactly, and that's what we love about this championship, and that's why people come and race in Ferrari Challenge, because anything is possible. And exactly what Dan Cornish said, I'm living the dream. I get to win a race in a Ferrari and then go home in a Ferrari. And guys, we've got more Ferrari goodness for you coming up. Next, we're going to have some FXX cars out on track, courtesy of the XX program. And then we still have one more race, Trofeo Pirelli, coming up. So on behalf of Amanda Busick, Brian Till, I'm Shay Adam. Thanks for hanging out with us, but don't go too far away. There's more Ferrari goodness coming your way.